Coming to you from USL headquarters, this is Steele Some Time. Here's the USL's Kelsi Steele.
Week 16, Episode 5. Welcome on in to Steele Some Time. I'm your host, Kelsi Steele, joined by the man himself, Scott Stewart, and our lovely producer, Matt Calvo. Guys, welcome on in. Scott, how was your weekend?
Pretty fantastic. A lot of scores that I will say I woke up on Sunday and was like, wow, I really need to watch these games. I need to start prioritizing my Saturday night. Like, forget going out, forget having fun, guys. Lock in on some USL Championship this weekend is further proof that I need to align my priorities.
Guys, this is how annoyingly committed Scott is to championship play. The dude had friends in town this weekend and got home from a glorious night out in St. Pete, as they usually are.
A little rainy.
And got home to continue to watch championship play.
I'm just telling you, when Fop Mob's blowing up the phone with all these championship alerts and I just see 5 goals in Vegas, I'm like, is this real? Okay, this is real. I need to go to bed.
Yeah, speaking of 5 goals in Vegas, a lot to talk about from Week 15 over in the East and the West. Hitting on a different kind of social moment this week, so you guys need to come in for that one because I've got a few items I need to bring to the table in light of the World Cup. And then, of course, we'll talk a little bit about Open Cup and, Week 16. And, of course, get into Shots Fired, where we've got a nice little rotation going on here between Scott and myself. So interested to see what you were bringing to the table today, Matt.
Be prepared. That's all I'm going to say.
Great, because we don't know what's coming, so we can be super prepared.
Fantastic.
Let's get right into it. Over in the West, you mentioned that 5-1 win over New Mexico. What's the deal with Vegas at home, honestly?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's one of those games where going into it, you know what you're about to get into, and maybe you don't know what the environment is that you're about to get into in Vegas because it's unpredictable as is should be in Vegas, but you know that they're trouble. You know that obviously if you're just going on paper that their results at home have been extremely impressive, and no matter if you're top of the West, bottom of the West, wherever you lie, you know that going to Las Vegas is going to be a difficult place to play, and obviously, our former Western Conference leaders saw that firsthand on Saturday night in a bad way.
You got to wonder a little bit, too, if New Mexico was coming off of an Open Cup hangover. A lot of games here within a quick period of time. But the thing is, it's not like they didn't play well, especially when you go, really dive into the stats here. I mean, they had a higher possession by nearly 30%. New Mexico controlled that game. Their passing accuracy was fantastic, about 88%. New Mexico performed. They just didn't finish. And it was almost once they got to that point at the end of the game where they came back, I thought it was 70th, 80th minute, finally got a goal, and then all of a sudden it was like, snap. Las Vegas just came out with 2 back-to-back, and it was just like deflated a little bit, I think, for New Mexico at that point.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that, looking at Vegas at home, you can almost see maybe why Vegas on the road isn't as good because they have such a bona fide game plan when people come to Cashman Field. And maybe they try and put that game plan on other fields and don't experience as much success. And New Mexico, for them, echoing what you said, they're a great team and you can play well and still lose 5-1. And I think, I saw Eric Winalda's tweet after the game just saying, like, New Mexico fans, like, we're all rooting for you in the Open Cup, like, go beat Dallas, championship got your back, like holding it down, but
which is so cool.
Yeah, it's great. It's fantastic. But exactly like you said it, New Mexico played well, but that scoreline has to be deflating, and obviously it hurts your goal differential, which I'm sure the coaching staff and the players are just as angry about as the actual result itself. So to come away 5-1, I mean, it's a lopsided loss, but like you said, they've had their legs tested multiple times in the last few weeks, and maybe more than any other team in the West, and that's not going to lighten up with their road match in Dallas this week for the Open Cup. So the road may not get easier for New Mexico, but I think that this team is so good that they're just going to be able to say, all right, let's just take that blow and we heard the bell, let's go to the next round.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how they respond this week in the Open Cup and then again in regular season play. It's a lot on their plate for a new club and, you know, a new fan group kind of dealing with this adversity for the first time as well, you know.
And not the most roster depth either. I mean, New Mexico doesn't have, like, guys 1 through 23 out there on the field. Troy Lacine has a very core group of guys that he likes to rely on. And especially when you've had to deal with the Josh Suggs injury recently, it's just kind of like, how much time is being put on these guys' legs. And I think at this point they're probably thinking they're lucky stars that Frater did not get the Gold Cup call-up, because that could have put a hurt on them even more.
Just over 200 miles down the road, you've got a train that just won't stop rolling.
Yeah.
And over in El Paso, 9 games unbeaten. I mean, more and more, Jeff Fruiter sounds like a freaking genius.
He is, man.
I think actually we should take credit for that on the Steele Some Time podcast.
Yeah?
They're undefeated since the podcast started.
Ooh.
An excellent producer's note.
So they should be the biggest fans of the show that are out there.
Shameless plug.
Should they be loco for Steele Some Time, would you say? Maybe? Matt Calvo?
You went there. I did not.
As we quickly move on.
As we quickly moved on.
Seriously, though.
We have a club that is honestly getting it done all the way around, too. And I think that's important to kind of to make sure people understand, too. This is not just an offensive power team. Their back line is strong. I mean, they're performing in every aspect of the game, which is why they're so successful at this point in time. They're tied in the West for the lead in shutouts with 7, and they're also tied in goals conceded at only 12.
Yeah.
It's and that's in 14 games too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very impressive.
They've shored up the back line, and I think that, again, the talent has always been there, but the addition of Drew Becky, I mean, I would love to be Drew Becky right now, mainly because your team's flying, your sister Janine's killing it in the World Cup. Like, it's probably a great time to be Drew Becky, but it's also a great time to be an El Paso fan, just because Mark Lowry, I think we touched on it a few weeks ago. You know, this was a train that was moving maybe slower than originally anticipated, and now it's like full steam ahead, and obviously their run speaks for itself.
Puntastic.
Well
done. At some point, the train jokes are going to get old, right? It's just so easy.
Maybe, but I do like to think we can conduct a few more.
I can't. Oh, my God. When we talk a lot about
Calvo just shaking his head.
back on track here.
Back on track.
It's not stopping.
No.
Kiesevetter's been great, and he's been that consistent talking point, I think, for El Paso. I really think that we need to draw more attention right now to what Omar Salgado's doing for this team. As an El Paso native, he was the club's first ever signing, and I don't know if you guys watched this game. I don't know if you got a chance to see it in, real time on Saturday, but he commanded his presence out there on the field. And when Omar had the ball, it's just so impressive to watch him play. I mean, his ball control, his timing, he is so quick off the ball, and it is unbelievable the level of control he demands when he's on the ball.
I think it's a great example of a player flourishing under a coach who has him in a very specific role. And I think that prior to Jerome Kiesewetter signing, Salgado was asked to do a lot for Mark Lowry, and he was that man. I think he was the player who was probably touted most by the club as, this is our main guy. But since Kiesewetter's been coming in, Championship Player of the Month, obviously scoring nonstop, he has sort of taken a little bit of the spotlight, but the coal in the fire is Omar Salgado, and he's the one who is continuing to help make things happen for them week after week. And I think that might be the best thing for El Paso right now, is on paper, a lot of teams are going to look at Kiesewetter and say, how do we shut this guy down? How do we shut this guy down? But your focus should be on Salgado, because if we're going chicken or egg and you're not taking care of the source of the problem, then stopping one facet of it is not going to be your end-all, be-all, if you will. So I'm interested to see if they can keep this up. Obviously, they were knocked out of the Open Cup, and so they can focus directly on what's ahead of them in the league. But it's been an incredible run since like mid-April, late April, I think, for them. And obviously, they are pretty keen to see this thing continue to rise.
Yeah, I think his experience holds a big deal of importance with this El Paso club as well. You're drawing on a guy it's played for the U20, U23 national team, has an extensive experience, was a #1 overall draft in the MLS Super Draft. I mean, he's somebody who he's played internationally. He's trained with EPL teams.
Yeah.
He's got that experience, and I think we're finally getting that opportunity to kind of see that on full display, because Mark Lowry is surrounding him with guys who are poised for success and who complement each other. And right now, this El Paso team do a heck of a job complementing each other.
Yeah, and again, I think, we would never question Mark Lowry's tactical acumen, but his game plan from day one, it's a beautiful thing to be given a blank sheet of paper and to be told, this is it. You fill this page up with whatever you want. And El Paso being a team that is just brand new on this scene, what they've given Mark in terms of resources to succeed. And again, even the ability to add players into the roster like Kiesewetter to bolster that attack and sort of Drew Becky, another name that is easy to point to, top to bottom, right? And whether you're leading the line or whether you're holding it down at the back, he has been able to see this team continue to improve its form because he knew what his plan was from day one. Mm-hmm. He stuck to it. They might have made minor tweaks because who hasn't?
Right.
But he stuck to the overall game plan. He's been able to bring in some additional pieces, and now El Paso looking like one of the scariest outfits in the West.
100%, 9 games unbeaten. But over in the East, we had a club in the Tampa Bay Rowdies that at one point we were like, are they going to make this super unprecedented run in championship play? Now, all of a sudden, they haven't won in 2 games, 2 weeks. You're coming off of a Week 15 result against Charleston, 1-1. They give up a really late goal. At this point, you're Neil Collins. Is there a little bit of concern there for you?
No. Not at all. Personally, not at all. I mean, I think it's what we talked about with North Carolina coming in there and making Atlanta fortress. I'm sure that was a talking point. I'm sure that they left that 3-1 and they were like, guys, that's a bummer. Let's not do it again. Mm-hmm. For it to happen the very next week, I think is just kind of a sucker punch to them a little bit. But reading what Neil had to say after the game and looking at the players' reactions, I mean, I was there on Saturday night, and they were obviously like, we did this to ourselves. And if you can recognize that it is nearly a self-inflicted wound from the beginning, it makes your recovery and your healing process that much easier to be able to drive on and say, guys, we need to own up to that mistake. That was on us. Seriously, let's lock this down and let's not have this be a theme for our season. So I'm not too worried. I think it's 2 unfortunate results in a row. They would argue they played very well against North Carolina, maybe didn't deserve to win, but didn't deserve to lose by that much. And then probably they would argue they deserved to beat Charleston and then didn't. How are you going to respond from here?
A level of maturity coming out of a young squad as well. And here's the thing, though. They may have, come into a late draw with that game against Charleston, but the storyline is nearly the same as it was in their loss to North Carolina the week prior. Yep. You look at passes, possession, shots, all of that. They're largely above that margin. They're holding that positive result. So I mean, in my opinion, they're doing all of the things right. And I think they're going to continue and get back on track. And I think it's going to be the Rowdies that we've seen all season, and just a minor hurdle in the road.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things where it's very easy to target teams who have blips in form on the radar, right?
It's a long season.
Because they did so well, and now you have back-to-back results, and it's easy to point the finger at them and say, well, look at them. Oh, they were always bound to crack. And it's like, we don't know that. Time will tell. I think it would be extremely harsh to the Rowdies to say that they are now in turmoil or they have to sort of readjust their game plan, just as I think it would be harsh against the teams who earn these results to say that you guys didn't go out and achieve that. Right. So I think there are 2 sides to this coin. I think you could probably flip it and land on either one and justify it. But if I'm Tampa Bay, I have no real reason to be shaking in my boots. We're an incredible team. Clearly we found the drive to be able to get to this point, and now, again, it's just about let's find that level of consistency again and see where it takes us.
Yeah, all valid points. And over in Eastern Conference play, Ottawa and Memphis, 0-0 draw. If you're asking me, that is a very good result for Memphis to come away with that against a very, very good Ottawa side. They have to be coming off of that one feeling pretty good.
Ottawa's been rolling, and they've got some talent in Cristiano Francois and more Sam, who's been lighting up the score sheet recently. So for Memphis to put in a defensive performance that earns them a clean sheet, of course, they're going to say to themselves, boy, if we could have found that goal, if we could have taken advantage of that golden opportunity, found 3 points, that's going to highlight what they've been doing and really give them that ego boost that maybe they're looking for right now. But by no means can you dismiss this result because, it's just another point. Well, Ottawa has been streaking, and Ottawa has been a team that also did not start where they wanted to, and now they're up and climbing the Eastern Conference standings. So if you're Memphis, again, I don't think you're prepared to settle for anything at this point because Tim Mulqueen has to keep them moving. Mm-hmm. But this is a point that you look at the end of the day and say, okay, we kept them off the score sheet, earn a nice clean sheet. Let's see where we can go.
Looking ahead to Week 16, we've got more Open Cup play, a full slate on Saturday, a Tuesday night action, so a lot ahead. But before we get there, we're going to be joined by St. Louis FC Sam Fink, a really, really great dude, one of the I think, the most vocal and true leaders in championship play, and he's going to stop in, talk a little bit about Open Cup, and shed some light on St. Louis FC and the history of Open Cup play down there. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Sam Fink.
Hey soccer fans, this is Jeff Reuter of The Athletic, and you're listening to Steele Some Time.
All right, we're now joined in by St. Louis FC's Sam Fink. Sam, how are we doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, not a problem. We're happy to have you, and you're coming off of a big weekend. How was Father's Day?
It was good. We traveled on Father's Day, which was unfortunate, but it was great to get back home and see the little one and my wife, so it was a good day.
It's always nice to kind of get back home and share some time with them, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like opening the door and having Evelyn run into my arms. It's a happy time for sure.
Well, that's amazing, and we don't want to take up too much of your time today, but I gotta get into what's ahead here on Week 16, and I think with St. Louis and what you guys have upcoming this week, it's a really cool opportunity, and for you, St. Louis holds a special place in your heart. I mean, it's the first place that you played your professional career, and took that hiatus in OKC in 2017, and then came back in 2018, and for me, I think the one thing I want to know off the bat is, what was that decision like to come back to your roots? Why did you decide to come back to St. Louis?
Yeah, I think it was first off, it was a really tough decision. I had a really good year in Oklahoma City, not just on the field, but also off it. Met some really awesome people, and the energy organization is top notch. So it was a tough decision, but I think one reason was family, getting to come back. My wife was pregnant. We were about to have our first child, and so it was cool to obviously come back and still play in front of family and friends. But then also, I think with Anthony coming in, I just felt like what he wanted to establish, the culture that he wanted to bring in, the guys that he wanted to bring in, and kind of what he wanted to start building here in St. Louis was exactly what I always wanted to be a part of. And unfortunately, I couldn't help establish that in my first go-around. But given the opportunity to do it again is just something that I didn't feel like I could pass up, or that I wanted to pass up.
And Anthony's been really outspoken about the kind of players he wanted to bring into this program. I know one big characteristic for him was, embodying this certain kind of character, good people first. Mm-hmm. And I think you see that a lot with this current St. Louis club. I mean, you guys have all been very outspoken about being a really tight-knit group. You guys are this really special family. And from my opinion, from the outside, I think you can really see that. And I think especially back in Week 6, there was a video for St. Louis that actually went really viral, and it was you leading this speech in front of the entire team, and you told Alardikwa on the spot that you guys had all pitched in to bring in his family for any game of his choosing, and I still to this day get chills when I watch that video. I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen in sport. I mean, how did that idea come about?
Yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed that. It was something that was really cool for us too. That whole thing just kind of came about just through conversation about family. It's something we mentioned here often, and something that I think gets talked about a lot in sport, but everybody can say it. I think it's much harder to actually live it out and to sacrifice for each other. And so just through conversation with Dikwa, he was just mentioned that it just made him really sad that his family would never get to come to America to see him do what he loves and to see him live out his dreams. And that kind of just struck me. And I talked to a few of the guys after the conversation with Dikwa, and it was just, honestly, it was so humbling to see how on board everyone was from the jump. Everybody wanted to help, and it was just cool to see everybody put aside their own worries and just, like I said, just sacrifice to see someone that they would call brother, someone that they would call family, really just be happy and joyful. So super humbling experience and one of the coolest things that I think I've seen.
Yeah,
Yep.
I mean, that story I think struck us all when we saw it here at a USL HQ, and really shows the level of character. And you know, it's you hear a lot of guys who say, I'll leave a club and I couldn't tell you, 5 things about some of these guys on the team. And to see something like that and to show how much each of these guys really truly care about each other, I think it's so much bigger than the game, And
Yeah.
in that video, you gave a really powerful speech. And it's obvious that, you're a really big leader. And these guys have a lot of respect for you. I mean, you were captain at Wake Forest, too. And, now a captain at St. Louis. What do you think the most important quality is to have as a leader?
I think that's a great question, and there's so many of them. But I think at the heart of leadership for me is one, humility, always being willing to grow and not being afraid to lean on others when you need them. And then 2, I think serving your teammates well is so important. I think the culture of professional sports is very tough and very, I can do this on my own. I don't need anybody else, but I kind of want to redefine that, because the reality is we all struggle and we all need somebody to actually love us well and to care for each other. So I think, for me, I just try to bring that vulnerability to light and just let people know that I know you struggle, but so do I, and I love you enough to get through that with you. And thankfully Anthony has brought in guys that have a similar outlook on life and a similar heart, and so that transition has been seamless. But yeah, it's been really cool.
Sam, that's such a humble answer. I'm gonna be one to say that. As somebody who works in sports, I think you have an idea sometimes of the answers of questions you're gonna ask, and it's refreshing to hear truly such a genuine response to a leadership question like that.
Thank you.
And, as a leader, you have the opportunity now to lead your team into the round of 16 in Open Cup play, which is super exciting. So coming off of a big win over Chicago Fire in the 4th round, which is St. Louis's first win against an MLS club, which is super exciting. So you guys will see FC Cincinnati in the round of 16 on Wednesday. My question for you, how much is Open Cup prioritized for you and your club? Is it like, hey, we're going for it this year? Is it more of it's just another game?
Yeah, it's a tough one, because I think any lower division team across the world that's playing a higher division is going to have that extra motivation and extra want to come out and do really well. But I think it's also important to lay out your priorities. And for us, Open Cup is a huge opportunity and a very cool thing to be a part of, but we also have bigger goals in mind when it comes to the championship and where we are sitting in the table and what we want to do at the end of the year. So I think finding that balance is important, and you just kind of got to focus one game at a time. And right now it's Cincinnati tomorrow, but after that game, win or lose, then it's Carolina on the weekend, and we just keep moving forward.
The underdog label has been quick to come to you guys, to St. Louis FC. Do you feel like an underdog truly going into this matchup?
I think the headlines want to pit it as a true underdog story, but to be honest with you, when I look around the locker room, I just see a bunch of guys that could be playing at a higher level, but whether it be they weren't in the right place at the right time or just it's not their time yet, they're not. So I don't feel like the talent gap is as big as some people make it seem, and I think that hard work and a commitment to each other are the ultimate equalizer. So as long as we continue to bring that like we try to do every single week, then I think we have a great chance.
I think what's really awesome about this game being played in St. Louis and for the round of 16 to be happening in St. Louis is that this city has a serious Open Cup tradition. You've won multiple Open Cups within this city. Do you just feel like there's this excitement around the Open Cup in St. Louis that you don't see anywhere else in the country?
Yeah, I think the Luligans especially are quick to remind us of all the history that St. Louis has had, and not only history but good history. St. Louis has done well in the past, and so I think when we do get reminded of that, it definitely gives us a little extra push to do our best so that we can hopefully add to that long history.
And lastly here, you and Tomas Gomez are both have roots in this area, in Missouri. How much of an impact does that have for your club and to be local products that represent your hometown team?
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool to I remember when I was growing up that I had a real hunger to just learn from pros and to watch pros, and there wasn't a chance to do that when I was a young kid and in high school even. And so to be able to be a role model and just somebody, a mentor or whatever it is for kids that are in the St. Louis community and growing up and want to be professionals is so cool. And it's just really cool to see, how excited the kids are after games or when they see us at the park, and all the questions that they ask us. It's just a really, really fun experience. And hopefully, the interactions that I get to have with these kids make an impact with them, and hopefully, 10, 20 years from now, we can talk about the next St. Louis kid who's making an impact with St. Louis FC, and maybe it's because of the conversations he had with Tomas or myself or another St. Louis guy. So, yeah, being from here is really special and something that, I'm grateful for every single day.
Making an impact in St. Louis. Sam Fink, St. Louis FC. Sam, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with us today, and we wish you the best of luck this coming week in the Open Cup round of 16.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
No problem. Take care.
Hey guys, this is Mark Anthony Kay, and you're listening to Steele Some Time.
Welcome on back in to Steele Some Time, and really appreciative of Sam for stopping by and chatting with us a little bit, and one of those guys who's always got a lot to bring to the table.
It's Open Cup season.
It's Open Cup season.
St. Louis is excited.
You gotta love it, and a lot going on in social and the build up to that. So really excited to see how that shakes out on Wednesday night. Speaking of social, obviously it is a busy time of the year for soccer fans.
Yes.
A lot going on in soccer Twitter. One thing that I think that we need to take note of is that my girl, JJ, is back out on the field. Or Julie Ertz, as she's now known. There's this tweet going around. It's this picture after Zach Ertz won the Super Bowl. I almost said the World Cup. After he wins the Super Bowl, and they are sharing a kiss on the field, and the copy from CBS News is Eagles tight end Zach Ertz leaves training camp to watch wife in World Cup. Cool.
A little one-sided.
Little bit. So it's taken off, and now everyone's giving their copy suggestions. And it got me thinking. We have some real power couples right now in professional sport. I think we're in a really cool time where there's a few going around that there are some serious pedigrees that our next generation might see.
Yeah.
So I've put a little list together myself. Matt Cavill's laughing because,
Just the pedigree comment. Continue.
I like it.
Sorry, farm reference.
No, I like
know.
it. I like it.
So I put together my list of who I think the top 5 are, and I'm going to have Scott rank them.
Okay.
So obviously, Zach Ertz, Julie Ertz.
Okay.
My next one up, Lindsey Vonn, PK Subban.
Okay.
Dom Dwyer, Sidney LaRue.
Okay.
Who also has a mini doc going on right now with Players Tribune.
Yeah,
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And then I've got JJ Watt and Kalia Ohai. I hope I pronounced her name correctly.
Recently engaged, correct?
Recently engaged, yeah. And then lastly, Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird. So honorable mention's gonna be Steffi Graf and Andre Agassi, but I'm going more in this time period. Yeah. Not that they're not relevant because they're still together.
Careful.
But yeah.
Careful.
Yeah.
Tread lightly.
I need a back way.
Our lifetimes, though,
Our
right?
lifetimes.
Our lifetimes. I think we can get away with saying that.
Right.
Number 1, Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird.
Okay.
I don't think it's particularly close. Megan Rapinoe is like a multi-champion in every single area of soccer that she's ever both played in and experienced. So she's a winner. Sue Bird is an absolute baller.
Yeah,
and
she's dope.
would break both of my ankles at first time asking. Would literally cross me so bad that I would never pick up a basketball again and feel good about it. So hard number 1, Megan Rapinoe and Sue Bird. Number 2, I think I would probably go Zach and Julie. And I think that, if we were going with copy suggestions, something along the lines of 2-time World Cup veteran and champion Julie Ertz welcomes football-playing husband to France to watch her triumph again, something along those lines.
Welcomes, like he didn't have a choice to come.
Right, like welcomes, as in like this was happening, and I'm so glad that you're able to be here to experience this.
She allowed him to be there.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Not just like you have to leave training camp to go do this, but just like oh, that's right, you were always going to leave training camp to do this. Like, okay. So, solid number 2 there. I think I'd probably go Vaughn and PK Subban after that, just because Lindsey Vaughn is outrageous, and Subban, I believe, is a Stanley Cup champion.
Yeah, national.
Yeah.
National
So that's obviously a great shout. It's going to be difficult to not put Dom Dwyer and Sydney Leroux anywhere. I mean, the fact that they don't break the top 3 is probably heartbreaking for a lot of people out there.
What a time to be alive.
I know,
what
a time to be
couple
alive.
Universe.
What a time to be alive. And they've obviously experienced the move across the country for Sydney and Cassius to come to Orlando, and Dom being a longtime Orlando guy. So I think they'd probably go there, and absolutely no disrespect to Watt and Ojai. I just don't know them that well, So I think number 5 is a pure lack of information and knowledge, but shout out to those two for keeping their relationship relatively private. We got some winners.
I thought we were going to go with like the combined name thing.
Oh, we'll save that for next week.
A couple naming conventions.
Sports Power couple combined name ranking.
We'll hit those
somewhere
up in the thread.
If that's the title, then I will come up with as many couple names as you want to justify that. So I'm down.
All right, Scott, I love it. Thank you so much for your pop culture insights. Just bringing a lot to the table.
Megan
today.
Rapinoe is number 1, always and everything forever. So just get used to it.
Heading into week 16, we have Open Cup play, baby. 2 teams left. We're going to start off first with St. Louis and Cincinnati. Does St. Louis have a better chance in this matchup? Before we get there, I want to briefly touch on Cincinnati and Louisville's match this previous week. I know you and I had a off-the-record conversation about it. I'll just weigh in quickly. I had higher hopes for Louisville. I expected more out of the gate. No offense to the guys that they have on the pitch right now. I just thought, one, from a purely physicality standpoint, they were roughed around a lot. And I felt like I never saw a good sequence put together.
I think what hurt maybe both teams from the outset was the relative lack of environment. And I think that those two teams... Which is
weird coming out of Nippert.
Oh, I know, but I think those two teams are used to going into a 30,000-seat venue with 25,000 fans in the stands, and they know that this is a big-time environment, this is a big game, and I just don't feel like either team were necessarily up for the cup, as you would say via our U.S. soccer translation there. So I do think that Louisville probably regrets not capitalizing on a couple of opportunities, but the fact that they did hold Cincinnati that late, and keep in mind this is an MLS roster, whatever you want to say, I think Louisville would argue that they have what they would argue is similar quality on the field, but I think they were probably hard done by in a couple moments in the game. Cincinnati obviously take it away, but that transitions into me saying, first off, I think St. Louis has a better chance because it's at home for them.
Right.
They get to host, and I think that instantly means much more for the home side, that they're able to welcome FCC in. And listen, they've done it before, but I think the stakes are just a little bit higher, and I think, especially after what Sam had to say on the Open Cup, I think that St. Louis is preparing for a big night. And I think that it's going to be a full Worldwide Technology Park. I think that the guys are going to be ready for it. And Anthony Pulis, I think, you're at the stage in this tournament where you have to consciously prioritize moving on from this to continue to fill up your fixture list and to sort of understand the physical and mental hurdles that you then have to jump over if you do continue to move on. So I think both sides are well aware of what this means for them, and I think St. Louis is coming into this wanting it more.
That's interesting.
Personally.
And they have a rich Open Cup history as well. And, shameless plug, Nicholas Murray did a really in-depth, cool look at the soccer in St. Louis and this being this amazing soccer city.
He was there, actually, in 57 when they won, which is how he knows so much.
Once again, tread lightly.
We love Nicholas Murray. Let's not do.
Nah, Nick probably has written it so
bless his
well.
heart.
He has probably written it so well that it could be construed as if he was there on that night. That's how good he is.
A lot of history.
I just get uncomfortable when age comes up. I'm just gonna put that out there.
No, that's great. That's great. I understand. Young bloods, old bloods, we're all family.
Here's my thing: is I've been very vocal on this podcast about my reservations with St. Louis, and I've said over and over again, I will give credit when credit is due. And from my point of view right now, St. Louis is not doing enough for me offensively, and in this Open Cup format, now playing against an MLS team, they have got to put more on the board. But what's interesting about this matchup is they're hosting an MLS side in FC Cincinnati that also struggles to put numbers up on the board. And when I looked into it a little bit this morning, I was like, oh, cool, I'm right. Also, both sides have ironically only scored 14 goals this season. Both of them, which are both tied for like right near the end. So you've got FC Cincinnati and Real St. Mark.
Close.
Real Salt Lake tied for the lowest in MLS, and then you've got St. Louis FC.
So my question for you following that is, I think that St. Louis is a little bit more rough and tumble than Louisville. I think that St. Louis, if we're going off a physicality standpoint, I think that St. Louis is better prepared to field a side that can hold their own physically against St. Louis. And here's the thing about Cincinnati as well is, I went to watch them in Orlando, about a month ago now, because I had to see James O'Connor taking on FC Cincinnati at some point. And they went up, and Orlando stormed back, not necessarily quickly, but I think it was more the fact that, and I think Louisville can speak to this as well, Cincinnati, I think, is still willing to let opponents back into the game at this stage. So I think if you go down and you're St. Louis, it's not the end of the world. I think, again, it comes down to Anthony Pulis and Sam really playing a big role in this, sitting down with these guys and saying, okay, we know what our priority is, and we know that, even if we go down against this team, we have to believe in ourselves and our ability to fight back. And so I think if they can maintain that belief, and that sounds kind of like a coach's cliche, like a little bit of coach's speak there, but like genuinely, if they have the belief that they can be the team that is going to be more physical, go after the 50-50 balls, and if you lose those, win the second ball, attack Cincinnati, take the game to them, why would you not be able to believe that the next round's in sight?
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a really good analysis. And, as hard as I am on St. Louis, I do think they have a really good chance. I think they stack up really well. And I'm interested to see what this result is going to be.
Russell Cicerone.
Yep.
83rd minute, 1-0, St. Louis.
All right, you heard it here first, people. Scott Steele.
And if this happens, I would like to formally announce that my 2 weeks notice and resignation will immediately follow because I'm hitting the lottery the night of the game. I will go to Circle K down here and pick up like at least 8 tickets because if I can hit this one, I can hit anything. You just got to believe, right? You just got to believe.
Scott Stewart pointing his bat, calling a shot.
Calling a shot.
Also, like, such a Midwest thing to be the only gas station you reference is
Circle
K.
Yeah,
which are, like, so slim in Florida, but whatever.
Yep.
Speaking of goals, we have a very different scenario over in Dallas and New Mexico. You've got two teams that know how to score goals and do it a lot. So I think that we're going to have a little bit of a different scenario. I mentioned earlier that New Mexico was coming off of a Open Cup hangover a little bit. They've played a lot of games here in these last 2 weeks. So a part of me, I am slightly nervous about their legs going into this one. I'm going to be honest.
Totally fair. Totally fair point. I think that's, we've obviously touched on that, multiple times in the last couple of weeks is just New Mexico, just the sheer volume of minutes and time that they've had to spend, not only on the field, but you look at travel as well. I mean, this team has been bouncing back between road, home, and now they have to go to Dallas. And I think they'll have a lot of fan support there, which is awesome because for them to go to Colorado and have it practically be a home environment for them, at least from what you could tell on the broadcast, has to be sort of the thorn in these team sides who have to welcome a team like New Mexico to them. So I will say that if if I'm going a little bench warmers and I pointed my bat in the sky at St. Louis, I'm going to just kind of point it a little bit lower for New Mexico and say that I think they can get the job done, but I think it's going to require a lot more than what it took in Colorado. So
two very different teams with the Rapids and FC Dallas, let's be honest.
But all eyes on this one. I think if it's a USL Championship employee's dream to be able to watch St. Louis, FCC, and then New Mexico go to an MLS team right after that, then consider me not wanting to wake up.
It's going to be a good one. Wednesday, we have 2 Open Cup games. It's going to be 2 very fun ones to watch. That said, we still have a lot of regular season play this week. First and foremost, Tuesday Night Soccer. Tonight, Reno and Phoenix on ESPN3. Make sure you tune into that one. Roles with reversed. Reno's doing their own dollar beer night. It's going to be a good one. It's something to keep in mind, too, for that game on the national stage. We're still going to see Phoenix without 2 of their big players who are on Gold Cup duty at the moment. So something to keep an eye out for as Phoenix goes on the road, but a really good one for ESPN3 tonight and Tuesday night soccer. Scott, for you, looking at Saturday's slate, is there one game in particular that sticks out? Because I'm looking like we've 17 games on Saturday?
Yeah, quite a few.
Quite a few.
One Sunday, one Friday, I believe, to plug those 2 games as well. But I think that first and foremost, the 5 o'clock game, the Bethlehem game, who are coming off the win over St. Louis FC, I think that spoke volumes on their ability to perform regardless of where they're at and in what time they're in. So for Tampa Bay to go to Goodman Stadium, the venue changed to go to Goodman Stadium on that Saturday, they're going to be sort of the first man up. They are the first game that day, which kind of helps a guy like me who's working that night and can kind of focus in on that one. But I think you're going to look at Pittsburgh hosting New York. Pittsburgh coming off one of the biggest wins in their club history, the 5-0 at Atlanta.
Yeah.
At Atlanta, on the road. Dos Santos doing wonders there, and I think he'll rightly deserve whatever plaudits he gets this week. OKC welcoming Phoenix on the back end of, again, another midweek game for Phoenix and 2 straight on the road. Solomon Asante, how will he perform? I think another easy one in the West, though, is the team we just touched on a few minutes ago, El Paso and Las Vegas. I mean, Vegas on the road, coming off the big win over New Mexico. That's fantastic, but you're going into, an El Paso environment that is going to be very, very close to what we believe will be a sellout. So a nice raucous environment. El Paso obviously supporting the squad. So I think a few games on Saturday, but plenty to choose from, obviously.
Another one I want to keep in mind is Sacramento and Tulsa. That's going to end our night as well. Late game if you're on the East Coast, so 11 p.m. I think that one's going to be really entertaining as well. A lot of good matchups, though, this week, so we're looking forward to seeing what our results come out of there. Week 16, man, it's going to be a good one. We are so close to that halfway mark. That being said, I think we have to finish out this episode the only way that we know how, and that's with our friend Matt Calvo. Take it away for Shots Fired.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Happy to be here.
So this past week we saw 2 long-suffering sports fan bases get rewarded with championships in the St. Louis Blues and Toronto Raptors. So fully expecting where Kelsi Steele will go with this topic. The topic for today's debate is which sports fan base deserves a championship next.
Is this catered to me?
She's made this argument literally every day.
Every day of my life I make this argument.
And here's the opportunity to make it globally on the podcast.
Okay.
For not just our purposes, because we've heard it enough, quite frankly.
Ouch. Okay. And Scott can't say what I'm gonna say. No one's gonna see this coming, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, Scott was victorious last week, I believe. So
I have to go first.
He has the home court advantage to go first. Are you prepared for your response?
You know what? Why not? I have one that it's just been a long time, so maybe we just give it to him out of pity.
All right.
And that'll be my angle.
When you're ready.
I believe the year was 1989. I was not even alive the last time the Notre Dame Fighting Irish won a national championship in football. And over a 25-year drought now, the Irish, I think 11 and unofficially 13-time national champions. For a program with such rich history and resources as them, fan base aside, as I will mention, I think it's hard to argue that there's a team that's been waiting as long with as much pedigree as a team like Notre Dame. So let's see it happen.
I think the show would do really well in service of a rebuttal segment as well. Like, I think if we were able to have 3 minutes of Scott and I just yelling at each other on camera,
sounds like
on the
criticism
mic,
of the operation. Just saying, sounds like criticism of the operation. Couple fallacies in place here, Judge.
Wow. You went Notre Dame on starving fan bases.
Yeah, that's
a bold choice, my friend.
Hurting inside.
All right, are you ready?
Hurting
Hit me.
inside.
Go.
Give Cincinnati a freaking championship. All we have to do is be surrounded by cities that win championship. I'm looking at you, Pittsburgh. I'm looking at you, Cleveland. I'm looking at you, St. Louis. And it is miserable. You give us hope. Hello, Bengals. We would love a Super Bowl. The last 2 seasons start out super hot. You think they're going to do well. Oh, no. Let's break your heart. Let's not win a playoff game. Let's keep a head coach for 16 years and never advance in the playoffs. We lose all the time. The Reds give us hope. They shut us down. Someone give us a championship.
She failed to mention Indianapolis in that list. I guess.
No, I was running out of time. I really was.
That's fine. I guess we're just an afterthought.
Yeah, you
I think that was a subtle shot back.
2007 Super Bowl champions. So
skipping Indy was a subtle shot back.
That's okay.
It's all coordinated.
I've had
my heart is racing. Like, do you know what you just did to me?
I love that we're now video recording these as well, just for everyone to get the view of Kelsi when we do this segment, because you don't get the full heat when you're just listening to the podcast.
Yeah, you need to see it.
Shameless plug. Check it out on YouTube as well, and see the fire that Kelsi brings to the shots fired.
But if
segment.
Cincinnati wins, who do we laugh at? And that's the worst part of all of this.
It's supposed to be Cleveland. That's what sucks about this whole situation.
Well,
it was like Cincinnati.
But as a longtime Atlanta resident, ATL. We're still here.
Y'all just got an MLS card.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for you.
We did get the MLS.
In front of like 72,000 people.
Yeah.
Every time someone comes at me with something, I'm like, oh, wait, but you have this team that won a championship in your lifetime. I don't know what that's like. I don't know what that's like, and I don't know if I ever will.
And that was my only argument for Notre Dame fans, is there are a lot of those people out there who have been alive and never seen them win a national championship. Favored by the College Football Committee by far.
That is fair.
But they always lose.
But there's people in Cincinnati that Cincinnati just doesn't even know.
And that's the best part.
As growing, I know we're extending this really quick, but you got me going. When you are,
this does not count towards the overall score.
No, that's fine. As a true Cincinnatian, you are taught to never have hope, because if you don't have hope going into anything, you can't be heartbroken.
Wow.
And it's deep and it's sad, but it's how we look at things now.
Bain once said, there can be no true despair without hope.
I would like to make a motion that you just give it to her for the pity alone.
I'll take the pity.
Pity win.
We don't even get pity anymore. We just get made fun of.
Trust me, I'm well aware.
This guy's, I'm over him today.
It's hard to go against Cincinnati in the championship drought subject. And I just can't go with Notre Dame in anything.
That's absolutely understandable. Neither would I. I was forced.
I didn't even get the chance to talk about UC basketball and our amazing red carpet that was laid out for us in not this past year, but the year before in the NCAA tournament, where we literally could have made it to the Final Four and we just choked. I'm sorry. This done. I'm done.
So in all things considered, Kelsi Steele takes this week's edition of Shots Fired.
Not proudly, but I'll put it in the pocket with the others.
My only other argument would have been the Indiana Pacers, but listen, no one wants to hear about the forgotten children, so it's all good. It's all good.
I
understand.
On that note, a win for Cincinnati, long time coming. We needed this one, baby.
But not quite a championship.
Not quite a championship.
Let's have a parade in Cincinnati for Shots Fired.
1.5 million in Toronto, at least 3 people in Cincinnati to celebrate Steele's win this week. Let's
That'll
organize
do it for episode 5. Kelsi Steele's got her win. We're headed into week 16. We'll catch you guys next time.